All right, everybody, welcome into episode 87 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, the only sports podcast talking about both American and Brazilian sports. My name is Nick Hill, live from Chattanooga, Tennessee of the United States, as always. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. The last episode of the month of July, winter-ish here in Brazil. I guess really into like I remember late July is where summer really kicks in. It's really
Oh, God, it
when
is brutal right now, Gus.
yeah,
It's like I think the next 2 days are calling 97, 98, and that's with dew points in the 70s, dew point heat index up to like 105, 110. It's going to be a hot one, you know?
yeah.
Like
I
today,
always
here, go ahead.
I remember like covering soccer games in late July. I remember one specifically. I think was like 2018, and it was like July 29, July 30, and it was so hot I almost passed out. I was like in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was really hot. I always remember late July, early August would be like the peak of summer.
Oh, yeah, it's not the most fun time of the year. This is the time of year that makes me hate hot weather, um, just because of the humidity and the heat. And it's constant until we get to like mid September. So we just got to go through it for like the next 5, 6 weeks. And I think we'll be all right. But yeah, it's just a part of living in Tennessee. But it is late summer. We are kind of not necessarily in the doldrums of sports, at least in America. But we're only a couple weeks away from football. But the difference, I guess, the attention tonight in the sports world is on another kind of football, at least here in the United States, because the Women's World Cup is ongoing in Australia, New Zealand, and we actually get a game that's at a reasonable time tonight. Uh, the United States is about to play the Netherlands in their group stage. It'll be their game two of their group stage. And I don't know where they're at. I think they're in Auckland, actually. I think they're in New Zealand. Um, and It'll be an interesting game here because this was actually a rematch of the 2019 final between the United States and the Netherlands. The U.S. of course won that game. They're back-to-back champions heading um, into this game. Uh, Going into this game, the United States won on Friday night against Vietnam 3-0, and the Netherlands defeated Portugal. So both have 3 points heading into the match. And, you know, if the U.S. is going to lose a game here or at least draw, I mean, this would be the one. I mean, this should be their toughest test of the group stage.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like Brazil. Brazil also gonna have a tough test against France, the team that eliminated Brazil in the last World Cup in 2019. Yeah, I was excited about Brazil wins over Panama 4-0. Of course, Ari Borges scoring 3 goals. Definitely, she was kind of like the headliner, the best player Brazil. Marta, Marta was on the bench. I feel she's there more for her experience, her knowledge of the game, but I think she is trying to be on this last World Cup because it's her last chance of winning at all. It's the last Martha's like Messi, she won everything she could, but still doesn't have the trophy, the Women's World Cup in her trophy cabinet. But it was a good game, but the real test is gonna be on Saturday for Brazil against France. Like US have a great test against the Netherlands in about I think it's like 1 to 2 minutes. I found where to watch here in Brazil is on the YouTube channel.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's going to be a tough test because, frankly, I wasn't impressed with the women on Friday. Yeah, I know they won by 3 goals, but this is Vietnam's first ever World Cup, and in their previous competitive match, and I believe it was against Spain, they lost 9-0. So the U.S. did not come out and dominate like a defending back-to-back champion should. Now, granted, there were stand-up performances, namely Sophia Smith. The young 22-year-old who played at Stanford, she had 2 goals in the first half. Lindsey Horan added on a third goal in the second. But, a lot of the names we've come to know, like Alex Morgan, like she had a penalty kick and missed it. She missed the penalty kick. That's concerning. Um, So you have to feel like, maybe we're at a spot where we're seeing a transition from the older generation that's won back-to-back titles to a newer generation that's going to try to win more. But you do have to wonder, though, with this transition, I do feel like the competition is getting better and better by each passing World Cup. And I think we're about to find out here in this game just how much further a team like the Netherlands has come to being able to compete with the United States.
So, so a question for you, Nick, is Megan Rapinoe feels like Marta as well. She's also on the bench. I guess she's also there more for her experience than her, like, actual fit right now.
Oh, easily, yeah. I mean, she's not going to see that much run in this World Cup. I mean, she's there, as I said, she's there to tutor these younger women, like Sophia Smith right now, who might be the most dynamic offensive player that we have is like 22. I mean, she could be like basically our version, women version of like Mbappe, because like remember Mbappe came on the scene for France and he was just so young, so energetic, and really provided a
She
boost for
was
that
like
team.
19.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Smith easily could be that for us. But to have a player like Rapino, who's been through it, who knows how to win in this stage, despite facing a lot of criticism domestically, I mean that's someone you want on your side. So, especially considering that this is our first World Cup without um, about a Susan Ellis, or Jill Ellis, uh, the former head coach. So, and the game has kicked off. It's in the second minute now between the United States and the Netherlands. But I do expect, regardless of the result here, I expect them to beat Portugal and to move on, regardless, to the next round. But still, this is to me, this game tonight is a litmus test for how they may do in the knockout. Because I think the real question is, if anyone's going to take out the U.S., who is it going to be?
Yeah, that's true. U.S. is the team to be. Back-to-back champions. They are what France kind of is. And Flamengo just scored. Flamengo just scored in the Brazilian Cup semifinal. Guess who? Gabigol. He always scores on the biggest stage. Grêmio was playing way better. Missed a couple opportunities. Flamengo, like Flamengo one chance. Gabigol scored 1-0 Flamengo. Flamengo in front with 34 minutes into the first half. Brazilian Cup semifinal, first leg. Grêmio 0, Flamengo 1.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think two of the bigger threats in the Women's World Cup might be Spain and Japan. Spain and Japan each, they have so far outscored their opponents 8-0 and 7-0. Of course, Japan is the last team not named the United States to win the Women's World Cup.
Yeah, I hope Brazil makes a really big run. Hopefully, make it at least to the semifinals, because Brazil was dominant back in 2004 to 2008. Then it kind of fell apart. But hopefully, Brazil at least makes to the semifinals. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah.
But and Brazil, if they win on Saturday, looks like they're gonna qualify already for the knockout stage.
Yeah. The winner of tonight's game would qualify for the knockout stage between the U.S. and the Netherlands. So there's a bit of trivia there. I think another team too, because I haven't caught that many games, and this is just maybe my number one takeaway from this whole event. Do not put any more major events in Australia or New Zealand. I get it, someone's going to suffer with the time zones no matter where you put it in the world because of just how many time zones we have. But man, it sucks being in the time zones where the games come on overnight because it feels like
Yeah,
I'm not getting to see any of this tournament.
I agree. I like the when you have tournaments in Europe. I feel like the perfect time zone because like games there, for example, the night is in the early afternoon, at least for us, and even in Japan, Australia, it can be early morning. So I feel like Europe should always be hosting like those kind of major international sports tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously it's not ideal for Australia and New Zealand. I mean, they don't get to have the perfect, time zones either. This is their opportunity to get a tournament on their home soil. like this. So, I mean, someone's always going to suffer because of it. And, I guess, and maybe this is my psyche as an American, I'm used to thinking, oh, the whole TV schedule has to revolve around us, but it doesn't, And like, I mean, these guys, they're playing super early. Like, hold on, if I look at Auckland time, it's 1:06 p.m. So they're playing very early in the afternoon to put on this game.
Yeah. And for now, it's been an even match, very physical match right now. For I can tell, it's a very like it feels very even at the moment.
Yeah, so they're in Wellington, not Auckland. Also, too, one thing that's interesting, I don't know if it's just because it's the Women's World Cup versus the Men's World Cup. A lot of these stadiums have felt super empty. And this is like the second straight World Cup where I feel like we've had empty stadiums. Like Qatar, I feel like we had a lot of empty stadiums too. Where before COVID, it felt like we had the World Cups were very, very, highly attended. Regardless,
it's more like I feel like if it was in US, probably would have better attendance. It's probably soccer is not the premier sport of Australia and New Zealand. Of course, the Australian national team and New Zealand national team are gonna draw big crowds, but it depends. I feel like Qatar, Australia, New Zealand soccer is not the premier sport, and Flamengo I think is gonna be given a penalty.
Yeah, I'll say this. The other game I've caught so far is Colombia and South Korea. Colombia won that game 2-0, which kind of surprised me because South Korea, I was under the impression had a really good team. But, in Colombia, they made headlines in their warm-up match with Australia. And Australia had to call off the match because Colombia was so physical. And they lost their main star, Sam Kerr, for like 2 games. So I found their success to be quite interesting.
Yeah. It's I'm also expecting Jamaica to be interesting. They of course had a LVFL Bunny Shaw.
Yeah, and they drew France. I mean, that's an impressive result for them to go toe to toe with one of the best teams in the world. So you just have to kind of wonder how this will play out here as we head into the 8th minute of U.S. and the Netherlands. So who does Brazil have next?
France.
Oh yes, France. Yes,
Brazil and France.
Yeah, and that will be
Brazil
a barn
and
burner.
France.
And that'll be a big one on Saturday morning.
And shout out to LVFL Hannah Wilson scoring for New Zealand. So imagine scoring for your home country, like on your home soil. It's kind of a.
I mean, the pressure that must be on those players that are hosting. I mean, it's
and
just...
Flamengo missed the penalty. Gabigol missed the penalty.
Oh my goodness!
Oh wow! Yeah, so missed the penalty. So still 1-0, 40 minutes into the first half. But yeah, definitely, it's a big pressure playing at your home soil. At least you want to make it into the knockout stage. That's the goal for Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah. Oh wow, we almost had an opportunity there. We had a really good run up the left side, but we just missed it to the right. See, Sophia Smith set up. Hold on, let me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Whoa. What a
DeMello.
chance by Savannah DeMello.
Yeah, DeMello. So not so shout so far to Alyssa Nair. She's doing a really good job. Although she didn't have much pressure. Oh, we almost took it away from the goalie. Man, so far I like the pressure we are playing with on defense. It's going to give us a couple of opportunities, I think. But I think one thing I wanted to talk about in relation to the U.S. WNT, it has nothing to do with what they're doing on the field, but it's the conversations about them off the field because it feels like, and it may be just a fatigue of them, being very successful with the back to back. It's kind of similar a little bit to the basketball team at the Olympics because Americans just like expect the basketball team to win the gold medal every single time they play at the Olympics. But it's kind of like that with the women's soccer team too. But obviously, some of the players have been very outspoken in their beliefs, and there's some controversy on Friday against Vietnam that not all the players were holding their hands over their hearts for the national anthem. And you've got a huge contingent of people that say they would root for anyone but the U.S. women's team. And it's very interesting because these are normally the same people who are very patriotic otherwise.
Yeah, you know how probably a lot of those people that you mentioned have one, they lean towards one side politically, to the right side, and there are people on the women's team, that the U.S. team, U.S. women's team, that lean the other side. It's kind of like Brazil here. It's a lot of players have one belief, and a lot the core of sports fans probably a big part of it have another. But I'm still rooting for the team. I hope they do a good job. At least I hope Brazil, because Brazil never won a World Cup. We came up short in 2007. I'll never forget. I was watching at my grandma's house, and Brazil was down 1-0, and Marta missed a penalty that probably would have tied the game and things would have been different. So probably Marta is still have that play in her head. That's why she came back to her sixth World Cup, and she really desperately want Brazil to win this one, because if not, probably it's her last chance, like Messi in the men's World Cup last year.
Right. My stance on this is I understand maybe if you don't like some of the players' politics or whatever. I get it, especially like someone like a Megan Rapinoe. She's definitely has made herself her opinions vocally known. I get it, like if they don't jive with what you believe in. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna support America. I'm just supporting American teams, American players. Um, and to me, that's kind of that is that. No matter what they necessarily believe in. Because at the end of the day, we're America. We're supposed to root for. I think we should be rooting for each other, even if we disagree with each other, um, with our beliefs.
Yeah, like in Brazil here, I want Brazil to win it all. I'm a Brazilian in my heart, and you know, and Brazil and soccer go hand in hand, and like it feels kind of weird that Brazil, this you know soccer centric country, never won a women's World Cup. So it's about time.
Yeah, and then like in the U.S. is not a soccer centric country at all, and our women's team has been amazing in the past couple of World Cups. So I'll be curious to see if they can keep the trend going. It looks like there's a Dutch player down, but maybe they're just trying to get a stoppage of play. I think they're getting back up 13 minutes into the match. I guess while we're on soccer, I do want to kind of, because this probably was the biggest sporting event of the past week in the U.S. outside of the women. Uh, Lionel Messi, because you just mentioned him a moment ago. He is now in the United States. I had some breaking news. Shohei Otani will not be traded by the Angels during the regular
Whoa.
season, and they will focus on making a playoff push. This is being reported by Tom Verducci of Fox Sports. So, what is your reaction to that?
Ah, they go on in. Like the Angels are like they had their chips. They went all in. If they don't make this playoff push, if they miss the playoff, I think Shohei Otani is gonna leave. So now the question is the opposite. With that information, is the Angels are gonna try to go big in the trading deadline to get the pieces for this playoff push?
Yeah, because there's so much they need. It feels like they're deficient in every area but Otani. But
Yeah,
like Otani,
especially on their they need to better get a better bullpen. I think the bullpen is a
easily.
big concern.
Yeah, but honestly, though, when you look at the standings, though, I don't blame them. They're only 6.5 back of the Rangers, so it's not inconceivable you make a run at that at all. And then you take a look at, I got to pull up a wild card because I assume they would be pretty close to the. Yeah, so right now they would, because the Orioles have overtaken the Rays, so they would be. They're only 4 games back of the wild card. They're 6.5 back of the division, 4 of the wild card. So like they're right there. And look, I think they need to take a playbook out of the Braves, find some prospects, find some players out there that are being underutilized. There may be in unfavorable contract situations, and see if you can't beef up your roster because, as you said, yes, this is your chance to keep him. If you can make a playoff push and, God forbid, make a run in the playoffs, maybe you can keep Shohei. And I think for your future of your franchise, you have to do whatever it takes because if you can't keep Ohtani, then you're not going to be relevant for like 10 years.
Yeah, especially I think you also owe this to Mike Trout. Probably Mike Trout is the most excited player right now. He's like, so I get to be in a viable team that's gonna fight for a title because he also wants this for so long.
Yeah. Oh, the Netherlands strikes first against the U.S. The Dutch are on top. So there you go. The U.S. getting punched in the mouth early. We'll see how the Americans respond.
Yeah, 1-0. I'm waiting for the replay to show, but I guess even though they were pressing on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just good ball movement by the
Wow,
Dutch. I mean,
great
they were
play.
coming up the left side, and then they found the winger on the top, and she was all alone, and she was able to bring it back over to the middle. Well, actually, it bounced off one of the American defenders, and it's
Wow.
just a great shot from on the top of the box. I mean, honestly, I don't even think that was even really bad defense in the box. That was just a really good play.
Yeah, it was
Man,
it felt like a very coordinated play.
I mean, Newer was a little slow getting to that ball, goalkeeper. But then again, I don't think you were expecting a shot coming from
Yeah.
at that
Number
point.
Rudard. I hope I'm saying her name right. Rudard scored 1-0.
And we almost came back and scored right back. Man, of course, it literally the Fox replay came right back. So Rodman almost hit, and because like the Americans came right back to attack and almost shot from the top of from
Yeah,
the box.
the Dutch players felt distracted, kind of.
Yeah, and now we're about to have a corner. So if you're the Netherlands, you have to get yourself recomposed here. It's only the 15th, only the 18th minute, and because the Americans are going to throw the kitchen sink now that they're down. But
Oh yeah,
to kind of
but
go back to Otani, um, Mike Trout is certainly interesting because like, do you lose him too if you lose Otani?
probably I feel like it's that's why they don't trade Altani right now because of the what Mike Trout would do. Probably that's a fair point.
Yeah, and I guess when you look at the think about like records and stuff, how do the Angels make the playoffs right now? It's July 26th. You have a little bit over 2 months. Like I mean, I guess what is their path?
I'll say probably probably wild card.
Yeah, I think that's more likely than them winning the division. So for the next couple of weeks, they're at Detroit right now. They won last night. They're playing tomorrow, and they're playing a doubleheader tomorrow. It must be raining in Detroit, but they have a road series. So after their series in Detroit ends, they have to go to Toronto and to Atlanta the next week. So there's going to be tough road series. They have to play the Mariners, the Giants, the Astros, and the Rangers, and then the Rays, then the
That
Reds.
yeah, and a lot of those teams that you mentioned are like direct contenders to the wild card. Like, well, Rays are first in the wild card, Astros are second, and so those series you gotta win those. At least take 2 out of 3.
Yeah, like it's going to be hard though because a lot those are some of the best teams in baseball you're having to play. So it's going to be a tough row. Most of their series are really difficult. Like they have one series against Oakland left. They only have oh no, they have 2 series against Oakland left. So they have 2 A's. But like otherwise, like they have a series at the Mets. It's crazy. The Mets are like the second worst team they play left. That's which is very sad. But
Yeah, the Mets are being obliterated by the Yankees right now, and oh, how like is the New York Mets the most depressing franchise? But not only it's because they don't suck, but they suck in a way that because all the expectation that was built around with all the money they spend. That's why probably the Mets fans are probably the most disappointing fans this season.
oh, easy. Easy. I mean, there's no excuse for them to be 6 games under 500. I mean, they're only 4 games or 5 games ahead of the Nationals. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just it's
a
just
team that was
so sad.
clearly going to tank.
Yeah. I mean, quite literally. I mean, they would have the worst record in the NL Central. They would be below the top 4 teams in the NL West. I mean, they're just so bad. They're terrible. So
Yeah,
it's just
that's
unfortunate.
why you have to be careful about acquiring big names and trying to get not like because I know you have to having key veteran players are interesting, but all the Mets got was player that probably past their prime.
Yeah. So we'll see what the Mets do. I think Cohen's got some lessons to learn from this season and how he spends his money. I think you're just gonna have to try to do the more old-fashioned way. You got to develop talent. You can't just buy it. I mean, the U.S. is throwing up so much pressure. It feels like they're in the box like every minute. They just haven't come through yet. And see, this is the thing with Vietnam. They were in the opposing territory the entire game too, but it just feels like this team isn't as good at finishing as maybe previous women's teams were. Like they're really good at getting possession, but it feels like they haven't been good at finishing around the box.
Yeah, that's fair. Is because probably being without Kylie Lloyd and Megan Rapinoe not being on her prime probably have something like connected to it.
Yeah, well, they're gonna have to learn some lessons, learn how to do that very, very quickly. 1-0 Netherlands heading into the 24th minute, Dutch and American territory. But kind of transitioning back over to soccer. Well, I was getting into before the Otani news broke. Uh, Messi in Miami. It's finally here. And he didn't disappoint. He didn't start. He came off the bench, came off in like the 60th minute. That's when I finally found the game on Telemundo because I didn't want to pay the subscription fee on Apple TV. So I watched the game in Spanish. And man, wasn't it electric though? Like he scored the game winner. It was 2-1 over Cruz Azul. And he scored twice against Atlanta United in his second timeout as well. So 3 goals in 2 matches for Lionel Messi. I mean, should we have expected any less?
No, definitely he's making a big impact because for Europe probably Messi's past his prime, but for the MLS level, I would say he still can be very productive. Let's be honest, Nick. Messi is such a kind of good in free kicks, set pieces, uh, and kind of shots that MLS does not have that physicality that probably European soccer does. So you can be productive, you can be impactful, even though you're probably past his past his prime.
Yeah, I mean, it just I mean, you can tell he just feels so comfortable in the American game. Like he knows he can walk on. He's automatically the best player on the pitch, and that
Yeah,
he
and
is able to come on and dominate.
now Miami right now is in leading Group J in Leagues Cup, which is it was a new tournament that was created between MLS and Liga MX, the Mexican Soccer League. I like that kind of tournament. I feel like it kind of makes it stronger both countries. I think it was a really viable tournament, especially mid-season. And I think Inter Miami is one of the favorites to win it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think they're favorites to win MLS as well at this point. I mean, getting the Nessie is such a huge boon for that team, and I have to shout out the Miami crowd too. They were electric on Friday night as well. Like that was a great atmosphere, and the goal there at the end, and just the way they celebrate. I mean, that was just incredible. It was riveting television.
That's why Messi went to Miami. He knew he would be more impactful to the community than Saudi Arabia, and
Yeah.
I think Messi's family feels comfortable there as well. Like Messi, it was funny. There was a picture that was taken. Messi was shopping at Publix in probably somewhere in the Miami-Dade County, and nobody was bothering him because, as big Messi is, probably United States, he's not gonna be bothered every chance because the American like soccer fanatics are not as big as Saudi Arabia or Europe.
Right. Right. I think in the US too, a lot of Americans, just your normal Americans, like we're so used to seeing celebrities that it's just, you know, like it is what it is. Um,
Yeah, but
but
back to the point that you said about Miami making to like being a favorite to the MLS this year, I think it's hard. Currently, right now, they're in the bottom of the Eastern Conference. They have only 18 points, only won 5 out of their 22 games. So I think for Miami, the focus should be. Oh, Miami is also in the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup. So Miami has two chances to win titles with Messi this season: Leagues Cup and U.S. Open Cup.
yeah, I mean, I guess they're building for next year's MLS season as well.
Yeah,
So
they play. I believe they play. I was trying to find who they play, but I think it's another MLS team. They play Cincinnati on August 23rd into the semifinals.
and that'll be a good one too. But Cincinnati, those crowds have been going nuts as well. But it's cool having Messi play in the United States. So hopefully that's electric. And
It,
I'm glad he chose the U.S. over Saudi Arabia because it feels like Saudi Arabia is about to get like literally every athlete on the planet with the amount of money they're throwing around.
not Mbappe, not Mbappe.
Yeah, well, if I was only 24 years old, there's no reason to go to Saudi Arabia at 24.
And just for your information, Inter Miami plays Nashville on August 30th. Just letting you know.
I wonder how much Messi jacks up the ticket prices, just his presence.
Yeah, yeah. Or you try
Wait.
transfer.
Is it in Nashville?
Yeah, in Nashville on
I have to
August
say because the
30th.
Vols play the second in Nashville, so that'd be like a
Wow, what a
whole week.
weekend in Nashville.
Yeah, Messi and the Vols.
Messi and the Vols in Nashville on the same weekend.
Yeah, if you were still in Knoxville, I know where you would be in late August,
Oh,
early September.
don't question it. My press credentials would be like out of the top for both games. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be
I remember when I
unbelievable.
made that for I remember when I did that for Ronaldinho. Like Ronaldinho came to Nashville for like an event, and I stayed there for the weekend because though I covered Titans game on Sunday, and then I covered Paul Orlando playing for the AAA of the Kansas City Royals playing against Nashville Sound. So I definitely would be staying a weekend in Nashville to witness Messi and the Vols.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm probably not going to go to the Nashville game though because it's literally a noon kickoff in early September. It's going to
Oh
be
wow, it's
so
gonna be
freaking hot down there, and it's Nashville too. It's going to be 11 a.m. Everyone's going to be hungover at the game.
oh yeah.
It's going to be a brutal, brutal game. Uh, so I think this will. I think I'll wait and go to some other games, maybe a little bit later, and maybe some bigger ones as well. Speaking of SEC in Nashville, SEC Media Days wrapped up in Nashville last week. UGA, no surprise, picked to win the SEC. I think all three of us, you and I and Jason, basically alluded to picking Georgia to win the championship last week. But I think the most interesting thing to come out of there is SEC Media Days for Texas and Oklahoma's arrival coming to Dallas. They're moving it to Dallas, and I don't know. This just rubs me the wrong way as a SEC, homer, SEC, loyalist. Yes, I know Texas, Oklahoma are the new kids in the block, but Dallas all of a sudden does not become an SEC city. This needs to be like in Nashville.
But I understood why they did. It's like when you are welcome into a new group, you definitely want to make some impact. It's like when you're new to the block, you want to throw a welcome party to the block. A welcome party to the neighborhood. That's what probably Dallas is. It's like, hey, uh, Texas and Oklahoma, those are probably, especially Jerry Jones influence into those programs. Definitely, it's gonna be. I wouldn't. It was the venue already. Do they know where the venue is, or just announce the city?
I don't know. I just saw the city of Dallas, but I don't know what the venue is going to be.
I wouldn't. I
Uh,
wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if it's AT&T Stadium.
I mean, it currently could. It's going to be at the Omni Hotel in downtown Dallas.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
like, if you're
makes
going to hold in a
sense.
hotel anyway, why wouldn't you just have it in Nashville? Like, that's like Nashville's more of like a tourist party city than Dallas is. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah,
And granted,
but
I'm gonna be biased towards Nashville anyway as a Tennessean. So
no, yeah, I get your point. Definitely, Nashville was better than probably Alabama was. I remember when we were
easy.
covering Vols. Like I was so mad. It was like, why they couldn't be in Nashville when we were covering the Vols?
Yeah, it's like you're holding it literally at a hotel in the mall in a city that no one cares about. You know, like you're literally holding it in a suburb, and they need to move that baseball tournament too from Hoover as well.
And
Move that
uh,
somewhere more fun.
so why did probably Austin would make more sense? It's a big city and it's more connected to the Longhorns.
Okay. Well, the Nashville does have Vanderbilt, so I can't even say that. But like most Nashville doesn't even care about Vanderbilt. Now Austin is going to care about the Longhorns, and I think
Yeah,
Oklahoma would probably be upset if they put it. Imagine Texas A&M going to Austin for SEC Media Days. Because when it's in Nashville, Tennessee, we don't see Nashville as Vanderbilt City. We said, oh, a city where we have more fans than the SEC team that's actually there.
yeah, that's a good point. It
Because that
was
would
like
make
kind
two
of
teams very mad in Austin.
yeah, that's true. It's like they host like a neutral site, we can say, like for uh Texas A&M, Texas and Oklahoma. It's like, okay, let's pick a neutral site.
Right. I mean, and you gotta wonder too, will this mean Dallas will host future SEC tournaments, SEC championships? I mean, I think, for football, I think we should do a rotation now that we have the room of Atlanta, New Orleans, maybe Houston, Dallas, and then when Nashville gets their new stadium, Nashville.
Yeah, but I think there's gonna be I probably I wouldn't be surprised if AT&T Stadium would have hosted. I think the Big 12 championship I don't think they're gonna stay in Dallas for long.
No, I think because you still have some Texas teams in there. I don't know where you would move it. Honestly, if I were Big 12, I would host it in Orlando. Now that you have UCF and tied in with like Disney
Yeah,
World or something. I think
yeah,
that would
and
be the
it's a
way to go.
and it's a ESPN, you know, probably final, so it kind of makes sense being in Orlando.
Now, will the Big Ten start hosting theirs in Los Angeles? Is the question.
Well, the landscape of college football is changing before our eyes.
And speaking of changes in the landscape, we have more changes in the landscape because it came out that the Buffaloes, the Colorado Buffaloes, are in talks to go back to the Big 12. They used to be in the Big 12, historically the Big 8, but then back in the early 2010s, they moved out to the Pac 12. But now they are putting up the deuces. They're going back to the Big 12. I mean, it's just red alert for the Pac-12 at this point.
But for me, it feels like it. You know, the Pac-12, they're apathetic. Programs are leaving, and not bringing any programs. I haven't heard any programs that joined Pac-12 since USC and UCLA left, and now have Colorado leaving. I don't know what the outcome of the Deion Sanders era are going to be, but that is going to be exciting.
Yeah, and Colorado's a desirable team to have because of the Denver market. You want that market, and you got to wonder how Utah feels about it. I feel like Utah has to find a way to the Big 12 because BYU is now in the Big 12, Colorado's in the Big 12. Utah could be left in the dust here, despite being a
Yeah.
better athletic program.
And it's funny, the landscape of the conferences are changing because you have the Big 12 not being solely Southwest. It kind of, now being South, West, and East. You have the Pac 12, still up, with the West Coast teams, but they probably should think about adding teams from the Midwest, from the, you know, why not getting some FCS teams? Probably think about North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't know. Like, if I was Pac
Yeah,
12, I would have been doing something.
yeah, North Dakota State needs to be an FBS program at some point. What about like an Appalachian State? Could they support a PU5 team?
But I don't know for Pac 12, would it be a drastic move? They would have to fly, all like from one end to the country to another.
Yeah, but
We,
I could see like North Dakota State, Boise State needs to be a Pac-12 team. I would
yeah,
see.
if I want San Jose State or San Diego State,
Well,
they're
San Diego
very
State
good
is
at basketball.
begging. San Diego State is begging to be in the Pac-12, but they literally left the Mountain West and said we are going somewhere else, and they desperately want to be in the Pac-12.
If I was the Pac 12, I would add San Diego State, San Jose State, and Boise State, at least to be
Honestly,
somewhere
I would
relevant.
add UNLV. I would add UNLV over San Jose State to be in Vegas.
Yeah, that's true. Vegas is kind of like a hot market in sports right now. So
Yeah,
you replace Colorado with UNLV, you still have a big market.
yeah. But I do think what Jason said in our last episode was correct. These conferences are going to get so big that you're just going to have divisions within those conferences, and it's going to go back to what it looks like. But we're in that transition period for the Pac-12. Their whole fate to me is going to be dependent by Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. Because those are the most four valuable programs they have left at this point. If they leave, Pac-12 is done.
Yeah,
And then you have to get to the
especially
point where if they leave, then like Boise State, would you lead the Mountain West at that point for the Pac-12? I think the Mountain West would be more stable.
I think out of those programs that you mentioned, probably Oregon and Washington are probably the programs that are more hanging in the balance, because if you think about it, those two were the last programs they made it the postseason into the college football. I think Oregon was like 2014,
Right,
2013,
with Mariota.
2014. Yeah,
Yeah,
and Washington was like 2016.
right. They're the only two Pac-12 teams to go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Um, and Oregon, got to remember, they're directly funded by Nike. Like they get the most Nike funding. And Seattle, Washington, of course, is in the middle of Seattle. So they're two desirable markets. But you have to wonder if they leave. Do they drag Washington State and Oregon State with them? And I think like Oklahoma State, the answer is going to be no.
Yeah. I don't think Mike Gundy, I think, wants to be in the Big Ten.
No, well, I don't think Stillwater fits in the Big Ten. Like Stanford and Cal are much better fits for the Big Ten than Oklahoma State is.
Yeah.
So
So a lot of moving parts into, and for me, I'm curious to be how non-football programs are going to adapt, because we tend to think a lot about college football, schedules and adjusting, but when university moves from one conference to the other, it's not only football, it's men's basketball, women's basketball, um, uh, baseball, softball, volleyball.
yeah, and like the Big 12 is still going to be really good in basketball, for example. So it's going to be a tough conference. You still got Kansas, you've got Cincinnati. UCF's been decent in basketball recently. Of course, Baylor has been really, really good in basketball. Texas Tech has been really good in basketball. Um, and the Big 12 is going to be really good still in basketball. Um, but it's those sports definitely are at a disadvantage because they're not the ones who dictate the conference realignment. It's football that dictates the conference realignment.
Speaking of college basketball, this week was announced the Battle of the Blue Bloods. It's a home and home game series between Kansas and North Carolina.
Ooh, that's a good series. The battle for Roy
Yeah, the first
Williams.
game will be yeah, the first game will be in November 2024 in Lawrence, Kansas, and the return game will be November 2025 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Absolutely. And, Tennessee as well, they have had announcements too this week about postseason play as well, because they will be playing Syracuse in Hawaii, the Maui. So they're heading out to Hawaii to play in that tournament. And in that tournament, in addition to playing Syracuse, they would then play either Purdue or Gonzaga in the second game. And I think it's going to be,
Ooh.
I think it's going to be an exciting tournament because Rick Barnes has won several of these preseason tournaments, and I do think that also in Maui is Kansas, Chaminade, Marquette, and UCLA. So think about this: potentially Tennessee could play Tennessee, then Gonzaga, Purdue, or Kansas, then Kansas and UCLA.
Yeah, but those tournaments, they're, of course you wanted to win it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you can win in March.
Yeah, I get it, and that's what everyone's going to be waiting on, and that's what everyone's going to be talking about. But I will say this: I am excited for this team. I am excited. I think they're going to be really, really solid. I just hope they develop an identity on offense, but because I know they're going to be really good on defense. But rinse and repeat. But no matter what, I still support Rick Barnes and his basketball program. So I'm excited to see what they do. But kind of shifting back over to college football, we're going to continue our preseason preview series. First on the college side of deals, the Big Ten. And we alluded to this earlier. This is their last season before UCLA and USC. This is the last year where you really have the traditional Midwestern um, dominance of the Big Ten. And to me, that's going to be super weird after this year because the Big Ten to me is a Midwest conference, but it's not going to be after this year. And I think the biggest question is can Ohio State regain control over Michigan? They are now on a 2-game losing streak over Michigan. Of course, we just learned this week that Jim Harbaugh will be suspended for the first 4 games, but it's against 3 cupcakes and Rutgers. Like, I don't think Michigan will have any problems. But Ohio State, what do they have to do to regain control of the Big Ten?
Probably Ryan Day is going to be thinking about how to beat this physical Michigan team because, you know, if and this time the Michigan Ohio State is going to be in Ann Arbor, so Michigan probably is going to be favored to win it, and probably for Jim Harbaugh missing those 4 games is going to be more time to think about the Michigan Ohio State game because that's the game to win.
Absolutely. Like, they got to find a way to stop the run. It's crazy because they came out and played Georgia so well. They were able to throw the ball everywhere, but they weren't able to do that against Michigan. And that, to me, is extremely concerning. It's like they play really tight against Michigan. And like Ohio State used to be very loose, very like, okay, we own them. We own the school up north. That's not the case anymore. Like, Michigan now has the swagger edge over Ohio State. And, Ohio State's going to have a new quarterback this year. CJ Stroud left. I think it's going to be tough because, Cade McNamara is coming back from Michigan. Michigan has, I believe, 15 starters returning on their roster. Michigan's going to be the favorite here in Ann Arbor. And, of course, Ohio State, they have the talent. They have Marvin Harrison, who some people say was the best receiver last year. I disagree, of course. He didn't put up 5 touchdowns in Alabama, after all. But he's good. He'll probably be the best receiver in the country this year. And Ohio State's receiving core, frankly, has been their strength for years now. But if you don't get tough in the trenches, because when we get to late November, it's probably going to be snowing in Michigan like it was last time, you're not going to win. And I think it's going to be a detriment for Ohio State.
And another question about the Big Ten East is Penn State. I know because under James Franklin, they have been relevant. They have, like last year, they finished 7 in the polls. They were the 3rd best team in the East, but they always came up short. I feel like 2016 was their best chance. I remember they won the division, they won the Big Ten Conference, but they were out of the playoffs. So the question is, what is the ceiling for Penn State under James Franklin? Is going to be just being fighting but being close to Michigan and Ohio State?
Yeah, because they won the title back in 2016. But since then, they have not been able to. I mean, of course, Ohio State's been there for, and it feels like they've found every single way to lose to Ohio State you can possibly do. Like last year, they had the lead in the 4th quarter and ended up losing by 2 possessions. And they also got smashed by Michigan. It just seems like every time they're in those games against Ohio State and Michigan, they just find ways to lose. And I think, Sean Clifford, I mean, he had his moments of brilliance as quarterback, but he just wasn't good enough to get it done for Penn State. And now it's the Drew Allar era for Penn State. And I have faith that he could be an upgrade at quarterback. I really think that he could be the missing piece. Of course, I think Nick Singleton is a name to watch for Penn State. He might be the best running back in the country. I think he's going to be electric. Of course, he'd be one of a line of great running backs in Penn State. Think it back to like Saquon Barkley, for example. But if you think about their schedule, they have to go to Ohio State, and they get Michigan at home. You remember last year they got slaughtered in the Big House. It was like 41-10. Just got slaughtered. I may go out on a limb here. I think they can beat both of them this year. I think they can win in Columbus. And I think they can beat Michigan at home. Because here's my problem with Michigan. I think their offense, yes, they're very physical and they can run the ball. But as we have seen, um, I feel like they really lack a vertical pass. I know JJ McCarthy. Um, I think I accidentally said Kate McNamara was the quarterback earlier. He's now the quarterback at Iowa, which I feel like it's a team I want to bring up at some point too. But JJ McCarthy's the quarterback, and yes, he played really good at times, but he had so many turnovers against TCU last year, and I just don't trust Michigan's offense here. Yes, I know they're good enough to win the Big Ten. They've won the Big Ten 2 straight years in a row, but I am going on a limb here. I really like Penn State to come out of these three to be the Big Ten East champion.
Even though I brought up Penn State, I think they're gonna come up short. I think Michigan's gonna beat Ohio State and win the division again.
Yeah, I guess the question too is: can any of the other 4 teams here, Maryland, Michigan State, Indiana, or Rutgers, could any of them be a surprise? I don't really see anything from Indiana or Rutgers. Maryland still has Tualua Tagovailoa. And Michigan State under Mel Tucker, they had that magical season a couple of years ago where they had Kenneth Walker at running back.
2015, I believe.
But right now for Michigan State, it feels like they heavily overpaid for Mel Tucker.
Yeah,
and now they're going to be just mediocre.
Yeah, I agree. I think none of those 4 programs they mentioned can be a threat to Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State.
Yeah, I think a game to watch early on in those other 4 teams. Washington goes to East Lansing in week 3, September 16th. Washington just absolutely demolished Michigan State last year with Michael Penix as their quarterback. So I think Michigan State can get some momentum in that game. Maybe they spur an upset. Maybe they can get on a bit of a roll. I think also too Maryland, Michigan State in week 4. That'll be a game maybe for 4th place in the Big Ten East. Of course, at Rutgers and Indiana, in Indiana, they had one really good season back in 2020 when they had Penix, but now it just felt like they fell back off a cliff again. So,
how about the Big Ten West?
Yeah. Now, if you ask most people about the Big Ten West, they say, "Oh, this is the division that you shouldn't care about. No one cares. Everyone sucks in it." I do think that there is some, because here's the thing: no one was good in this division last year. I mean, Purdue was the champion. Of course, they just lost their coach to Louisville, Brian Brom. Illinois was, I think, probably the pleasant surprise of the conference of the West last year. They had a really good running game with Chase Brown. Brett Bielema had a really tough defense for Illinois, and they almost beat Michigan in Ann Arbor in the second to last week. But, man, outside of that, there really weren't any other good stories in the West. I know Iowa had a winning record in the Big Ten West, but, oh, my gosh, they had maybe the worst offense I've ever seen. They literally scored 7 points against South Dakota State. And that wasn't a touchdown. That was 2 safeties and a field goal. And I believe they averaged something like 20 points a game. And because the whole problem of Iowa is the head coach, Kirk Ferentz, his OC is his son, Brian, and he won't get rid of him.
Iowa had the second worst offensive in terms of point. I think they're only third. I think they're only in front of Northwestern, and I think Northwestern and Rutgers. They're the third worst offense in terms of points for.
Yeah, because Iowa has a really good defense, but when Iowa, because Iowa's had this tendency of being really good every 1 to 4 or 5 years. Where like they're almost in the playoffs. Remember, I think it was like 2015. They were up in the fourth quarter in the Big Ten title game, and they could have made it to the playoffs at 13-0. Now I think they
Yeah,
would
I
get
remember.
absolutely demolished.
Yeah, that was the year, and I remember Colin Cowherd saying Iowa was the fake ID of college football.
Yeah, they never really have that talent. But when you look at Iowa, I mean, they never are going to have the most talented team. But Kirk Ferentz does put out enough winning teams where he doesn't get fired. But I do think if I were an Iowa fan, I'd be demanding at least more exciting football. I can't imagine it's fun being an Iowa fan right now, at least offensively. Now they get Cade McNamara from Michigan, who lost out the starting job there. I mean, he'll be an upgrade, I think, over what was his name? I think his name is Spencer Padilla, I think was his name or something like that. Spencer Petras was their quarterback for Iowa. And yeah, I got to look up his stats last year because this dude was he was bad. Yeah.
Flamengo scored again in the 24th minute of the second half. Thiago Maia scored. Grêmio was putting a lot of pressure, but Flamengo always finds a way to score. 2-0 in Grêmio Stadium. Great pass by Rascaeta to Thiago Maia. The ball got deflected. Flamengo 2-0 in Grêmio Stadium, getting really close to being one of the finalists in the Brazilian Cup.
Yeah. Also, the U.S. game has gone to halftime. It is 1-0, the Netherlands. So the Dutch trying to spur an upset of the number 1 ranked team in the world, the U.S. women's soccer team. So we'll see if the Americans can come back in the second half. But Spencer Petras, the quarterback for Iowa last year, had only 1,700 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns. Jalen Hyatt had the same amount of touchdowns in one game as a receiver that Spencer Petras had the entire year passing. 5 interceptions. A QBR of 31.3. I mean, 114th in the country. I mean, just Iowa was yikes. They were bad.
That's why they brought the transfer from Michigan.
Yeah, and hopefully they make sense. But that really sparks their offense. But the two teams, probably the two historically best teams here in this division, is Wisconsin and Nebraska. But both of them were not very good. Nebraska hasn't been good in years. They haven't made a bowl game since 2016. Scott Frost
Against the Bulls.
Yeah. I mean, an utter failure of a tenure. A shocking failure. I mean, went undefeated at UCF and couldn't do anything in Nebraska. His successor is Josh Heupel. UCF gets worse every single year, yet he's been very good at Tennessee. And you have to wonder, was the failure more on Frost, or is Nebraska just out of its element in the Big Ten? Because here's the thing. Nebraska back in the day when they played in the Big 12, they were able to go recruit Texas because those players were able to go back home and play with Nebraska. You're not able to do that anymore if you're Nebraska. Like, you're not really recruiting anywhere playing anywhere that's a fertile recruiting ground. Plus, I think Nebraska has lost its mystique. I don't think people look at Nebraska like, oh, yes, I have to go play for Nebraska. And I know Matt Rhule is a great coach. He's done very good things at Baylor. But I just fear that Nebraska is climbing uphill in the Big Ten. And
it feels weird. It feels weird because Nebraska kind of did early what a lot of the programs are doing, moving from a conference that you don't feel like you belong, but you want to move anyway. But it didn't work. So probably should Nebraska go back to the Big 12?
That's what I saw the Colorado news, because for Colorado, the Pac-12 has not worked for them. And because Colorado used to be way better in the Big 12 too. Because Once again, Colorado, you don't have a ton of high school athletes out there. I mean, they have more than Nebraska does, but still, like having Texas as a recruiting ground is huge. And Nebraska needs to find a way to get that back. And I just don't love their position in the Big Ten West. Now, I think Matt Rhule will make them a better team, but I do think in the modern era of college football, I think Nebraska has a ceiling. I don't know what that ceiling is. It might be like 9 games or something like that, but I do not see a path forward for Nebraska being like a top 5 team. Now, with a 12-team playoff, I think they could make a playoff or two eventually. But I think the other team that hired a new coach, Wisconsin, with Luke Fickell, they're much more likely, in my opinion, to be a playoff team in the 12-team era. Because I think, they're just a competent quarterback away from being really good.
Yeah, it's so sad because Nebraska, if you think about it, was one of the powerhouses in the last decade, in the last century. They won a lot of titles in the late '90s, and but they couldn't keep up with with the new trend of college football.
Absolutely. But as I just said, though, I think Luke Fickell will be the more successful of the two. I really think if you could take Cincinnati to the playoffs, what can you do at Wisconsin? I think you can do a lot of things there. And
And I think a few years back, Wisconsin was really close to being into the college football playoffs. I remember they lost a game late in the season that derailed their chances.
right. I can't remember exactly what year that was, but they've had several opportunities. But now in the 12 team, I think that we'll have some years where they definitely get in there. I think they got to find a way to get a vertical passing game in Wisconsin. Because I know they pride themselves on having big offensive lines, great running games. But if you're going to win on the biggest stage, you got to be able to pass the ball. And Wisconsin hasn't been able to pass the ball since they had Russell Wilson. So I think those two teams will be very interesting, and I'll be curious to see which one ends up being better. But like last week, I want to ask you, who do you think the worst team in this conference is going to be this year?
Northwestern, I don't see them improving. I think they're going to be 2-7 probably. No, like overall, I think it's going to be 2-10.
Yeah, I mean, they could be 0-9 in the conference. I mean, I think with this whole situation off the field, I mean, they were 1-8 last year. I mean, it's a bad situation. It's going to take them years, I think, to recover. Excuse me, and it's going to take them a while to recover, I think, from it. So Northwestern, easy worst team, but who wins the conference? Who's in the Big Ten title game, and who wins it?
Michigan and Iowa, and Michigan wins.
I'm going to go Penn State, and I'm going to go a little crazy here. Let's go Minnesota. Let's row the boat. Yeah,
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the Big Ten West, I think, is wide open. I think Wisconsin's going to be a lot better, but I think, PJ Fleck's been building, and I think if he's going to do it, he needs to do it this year. So give me Minnesota, but Penn State wins the Big Ten title. So that might be a hot take, but I don't know.
I mean, Minnesota, as far as I remember last year, they come up really short of being in the Big Ten title. They lost to Iowa 13-10. If they won that game, they would have been in.
Actually, I just typed in Minnesota football, and there was literally a report that just came out today saying former Minnesota football players make allegations of toxic culture under PJ Fleck. Okay, all right. I'm rescinding my Minnesota pick. Give me Wisconsin. I'll give you a more straight pick.
Oh, so I guess Luke Fickell is gonna do a 180.
Yep. because I would have Wisconsin being second because I was. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm reading now this PJ Fleck story. So apparently, coming off back-to-back 9-1 seasons, 2 bowl victories, that positive momentum. Let's see. Um, so a report released on Wednesday includes details from anonymous players, some of whom were starters, that painted a negative picture of Fleck and the coaching staff, with numerous issues, including a lax stance on the players failing drug tests and excessive workouts being used as punishments for violating rules. Players detailed a system called the Fleck Bank, in which members of the team accumulated coins via various community service endeavors, which could be used to skirt consequences for failed drug tests and other teams violations. They also used the word cult to describe Fleck's grow the bolt culture. We had to practice giving Fleck ovations multiple times. The first time because some people in the back were not moving as quick as he wanted. So they were required to give Fleck. Among the bizarre practices, player noted was that they were required to give a round of applause anytime Fleck entered a room.
This guy has a big ego.
he is. Jeez.
Imagine imagine walking to your news station, Nick, and your boss like, clap for me.
No, I definitely would not be doing that. Like that's insane. You don't build a team culture like that.
No, you're being with respect. No,
apparently Minnesota's athletic director has denied the claims. So go figure. And also, too, apparently so apparently exercises are used as punishments, apparently. So, even when they have injuries. Now, that could be a problem. So, there you go. So, certainly issues. I feel like the Big Ten has a worse issue with off-the-field issues than the SEC.
Yeah, definitely. It's
I can't hear you guys.
Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
I can't hear you. Oh.
Hello. My mic here looks fine. I don't know.
Hear you. Hold on. Let me.
But
there we go. All right, I think I hear you now.
Okay, good. So it wasn't in my end of the computer.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something probably crazy happened with my headphones, but
okay. So just to wrap up, I think the Big 12, if the Big 10 is going to be probably the last time we're going to see this kind of Midwest Big 10, and it's going to be, I think, interesting season, and we'll see what the Big 10 West can do. With off the field issues, hopefully they can at least put up a fight.
Maybe between not having any offenses and toxic cultures, it's not a great division over there. No wonder that division is such a crap show. But then imagine in Nebraska, though, you were the last team to lose to Northwestern under Pat Fitzgerald. So in the Big Ten, so in Ireland. But from one preview to another, let's get back to some NFL because the AFC East is on deck today. And this might be the most interesting division in all of the NFL this season. Because I think every single one of these 4 teams have huge questions, lots of hopes heading into this season. You got the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. Before I ask any teams for questions, which one of these teams interests you the most?
Oh, definitely the New York Jets. They got the splashiest the splashiest player with Aaron Rodgers. Probably all eyes going to be on it. But the team with the most to prove is the Buffalo Bills because they have been the team of the division for the past 3 years, but they never made it to the big game.
Absolutely. As if they don't do it this year, if they can't overcome the Chiefs and the Bengals this year, It's going to become like the 90s all over again in Buffalo. And it's just simply where you're at. Like Buffalo has to be in a mode of we're going all in, and it's going to be so hard. It's going to be very hard to overcome Patrick Mahomes, who might be the best quarterback talent we've ever seen. It's going to be hard to overcome the Bengals, who right now psychologically have your number. But for Josh Allen,
and I think not for Josh Allen, but for Sean McDermott, because he's a defensive coach in a very offensive conference. So if he again be eliminated, especially the way the Bills were eliminated in the divisional round, do you think he still has a job?
Ooh, I think if they don't make it to the AFC title game, you probably have to change. You'll probably will have
And
to change
go,
coaches.
yeah, towards some more offensive coach, especially look at all the drama that is happening with the Bills. There was a wide receiver with a lot of drama this off season.
Yeah, Diggs with the
Yeah,
contract.
Stephon Diggs. Yeah, Stephon Diggs. With a lot of drama that has been over the Bills.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, is this going to turn another Steelers situation where you have so many talented players, but then egos step up and kind of prevent you from accomplishing what you should have accomplished? Because like that Steelers roster with Antonio Brown, with Le'Veon Bell, who I want to talk about a little bit later for his own reasons. Just too many egos got in the way, and they weren't able to win anything.
And what is the similar? Go ahead. Sorry.
And then you got like Nyheim Hines, for example, being the backup running back and being out for the season now because he got hit by a jet ski.
And what is this big similarity between the Bills and the Steelers? A defensive coach.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you look at the Chiefs, they have an offensive coach. You look at the Eagles.
The Bengals.
Bengals have an offensive coach. The Eagles have an offensive coach. I think there's a trend there. I think in this modern day, you want to have an offensive coach. So they got to show that they have the fortitude in those moments to overcome the Chiefs and or the Bengals. And I know when it comes to the Bengals, they had the whole Damar Hamlin thing in the regular season, but that thing worked out in their favor. Like they ended up getting to host the Bengals, and it was a snowstorm. And yet Joe Burrow came in and dunked on you. So it's going to be interesting, and it's not going to be easy for them to win this division. As you mentioned, you have the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Because I feel like we've seen other quarterbacks go to the Jets when they're older, like a Brett Favre, and it didn't work out. But is Aaron Rodgers different? Can he pull what Tom Brady did with Tampa? Because it feels like this is that type of move that he's trying to pull off.
Yeah, that everybody be like, is this going to be the Tom Brady situation or the Brett Favre situation?
Yeah, but then again, it could be Brett Favre in Minnesota. And that worked.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of really nice talent around him. Like at running back, Breece Hall. If he is healthy, if he can stay healthy, he was the best rookie running back in the league before he got hurt last year. Michael Carter as an RB2 is pretty good. And good if Hall gets hurt again, but Hall, I really hope Hall can actually stay healthy for a full 17 games because he was electric before he got hurt. You have Garrett Wilson as your wide receiver one. I think, for fantasy purposes, he's someone I'm going to be targeting pretty early on. I think Garrett Wilson could be a breakout star this year. Not just for the Jets, but in the entire league. Not to mention you have Corey Davis and you got Alan Lazard as well. and McCole Hardman.
But the big question in this division, I think, is New England Patriots. How long they want to be this mediocre or like confused? Because Bill Belichick, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. But he hasn't built a competent offense since Tom Brady left. I mean, good God, he put like a defensive coach as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got Bill O'Brien right now as your OC, which we saw. Obviously, all the Alabama fans hated him.
Alabama fans were like, "Thank you, New England Patriots."
Yeah, thank you for getting rid of us or rid of him. The Patriots just feel like the worst team easily in this division. Mac Jones has been, as you said, he's been mediocre. He's just not.
But it's
And
because
it felt like that they really needed to get DeAndre Hopkins, and they weren't able to do it. Because now we look at the receiver room, they have Juju, but then after that, it's like Devontae Parker's your two. Like, that isn't going to get it done.
yeah, so big questions for the Patriots. And so for me, I think Miami is going to be the surprise. I think Miami is going to be the most improved team in the division. The way they finished the season, I think, but definitely, it all came down to is Tua Tagovailoa going to be healthy or not.
See, I was about to ask, can Tua actually stay on the field for 17 games? Can his head not get destroyed? Because you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So if he can stay healthy, that offense will be nuts. But there's a huge difference between Tua Tagovailoa and Mike White, who right now is the backup quarterback. You can only be a championship contender if Tua stays healthy, and they've got really good defensive players. They're gonna have Bradley Chubb in linebacker. We got Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey in your secondary. They have some dudes on this roster. This should be a title contending roster. I think Mike McDaniel is a good coach.
So I want to make this more interesting. Let's pick the best coach in the division, best quarterback, best offensive player, best defensive player, and then we pick who's gonna win it and who's gonna make the wild card. Do you like that? Let's go straight forward. In terms of coaching, I pick Mike McDaniel.
I mean, I know right now it doesn't look the same, but until Belichick retires, I gotta take Belichick. I get he's not great as a GM, but if we're looking at just purely coaching, I'm taking Belichick.
Best quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
Right now, and granted, I know I just said I would take Belichick, but I think if you gave him a better roster, when his other 3 rosters, he could still win a title. I'm taking Josh Allen.
Best offensive player, not counting quarterback.
Tyreek Hill.
Stephon Diggs.
I just think Hill. He did not miss a beat last year, even with the quarterback controversy. But what I will also say to that front is Kansas City won the Super Bowl without him, so maybe he isn't as important as I think. So
yeah, and I wonder what Josh Allen offensive production is going to be without Stephon Diggs.
That's also a really good question. Because I think he could. That could be more of a detriment to him than losing Tyreek was to Patrick Mahomes. Of course, Patrick Mahomes, I think, is a much better quarterback than Josh Allen. So I'll leave that there.
Best defensive player. Oh my God.
Sauce Gardner.
Yeah,
I know he's just in his second year.
Go ahead.
I know he's just in his second year, but That was one of the best rookie seasons you'll ever see by any
I'm
player.
between Jalen Ramsey, but since I'm a Jet fan, I'll pick Sauce Gardner as well.
Yeah, I mean he's great, and I think Jalen Ramsey's on the back end of his career. But I mean he's still really really good. Right now, I would take Gardner.
And now the big question: who you pick for winning the division?
Man, there's 3 teams here that could win it, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of them won it. And like, frankly, if you could tell me Tua could be healthy for 17 games, I would pick Miami. But I don't believe he can. So
I pick.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm gonna pick the Bills. I think the Jets have a really good shot, but I really do think Aaron Rodgers has fallen off. And yes, I think they will have a really good team. I think they'll be a wild card team, but I just don't think they'll be quite as good as a lot as you might feel like they're gonna be.
I pick Buffalo, but I think Buffalo is gonna be 12-14. I think
Yeah,
gonna
it
be a
feels like there's
12.
gonna be like I feel like they're gonna have like 12-5, 11-6, 10-7. All 3 of those teams are gonna be in that range.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I think they're gonna be a 12-5, 12-5, 11-6. But
Yeah.
for the wild card, I think Miami and New York are gonna make it with. I think Miami is gonna be 10-7, and the Jets are gonna be 9-8.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad. I wish we had done those categories for last week's AFC South. The best coach, best
Do you like
player.
that idea?
Oh yeah, I love that idea. Like really quick, just in my head, if I was going to do that for the AFC South, I would still pick Variable for best coach because he's proven he can win with a ton of different talents. Best quarterback, I gotta take Trevor Lawrence. I mean, everyone else at this point is either proven to be mediocre or a rookie. Sorry, Ryan Tannehill. Best offensive player, still going to ride with Derrick Henry. Best defensive player, I mean, honestly, this is going to sound biased. I'd go Kevin Byard, I think, or Jeffrey Simmons. And goal, United States. Lindsey Horan in the 62nd minute. They have leveled. And it's 1-1 with about 30 minutes left in Wellington.
Yeah,
So, so those would be all my picks. And of course, I picked Jacksonville to win the division.
Yeah, I'll agree with all your picks. You're more a specialist in the AFC South, but now we have
it's crazy.
remember.
I picked the Titans for like 3 out of the 4 there, but yeah, I picked Jacksonville to win the division. It shows you how
I'm just
it
seeing
shows
now
you how
what
I feel about the rest. It shows you how I feel about the Titans roster. I like the coach, and I like about like 5 players. I think the rest of them have a lot to be desired.
I mean, this quarterback issue is gonna be biting the Titans. That's true.
It
Like the
doesn't matter
Titans,
how good you are, the rest of the roster. If you don't have a quarterback, you have nothing.
yeah. And in Porto Alegre, just finished the game. Flamengo dominated the second half. 1-0 could have been more. Flamengo, I'll say, is 99% in the Brazilian Cup final. I don't see them losing in Maracanã in 3 weeks. So, but I'm gonna get that later when we talk about the Brazilian soccer. But that was the wrap up, the end of the game in Porto Alegre. But just to finish up the AFC East, so who do you pick for? So who do you pick for the wild card?
Well, in turn, I got to really think about the rest of the conference too. But I think when you look around the rest of the league, I do think that Miami and the Jets have very, very good shots of being in the wild card. So, because I don't think you're going to have anyone come out of the AFC South. I think you might have like maybe the Chargers come out of the AFC West, maybe the Broncos, and then in the AFC North, maybe the Ravens. So like I think you could have two teams out of the East.
I mean,
So yeah,
last year had one AFC East, one AFC North, and one AFC West teams making the wild card.
yeah, because I think you're going to have two AFC East and then one between the North and the West, and I think that's going to be a mix of like the Ravens and the Chargers.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. I think the Ravens and the Chargers are going to be battling. Both made it with 10-7.
Yeah. Maybe like the Steelers are like an outsider, but we'll get into, I believe I had the North next. So we'll talk about the Bengals. Can they get back to the Super Bowl? The Ravens, they just paid Lamar Jackson. What does that mean? Is Kenny Pickett the real deal for Pittsburgh? And Deshaun Watson finally gets a full year in Cleveland.
And
I think.
Speaking of getting paid, I know we aren't talking about AFC, but in the NFC East, Saquon Barkley got a 1 year, $11 million deal.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's not that much compared to what Justin Herbert got, that 5-year, $262.5 million for the Chargers. I mean, it just goes to show how devalued running backs have become. And this is one topic I wanted to bring up, and I think it makes as much sense to bring it up with this. So Le'Veon Bell, former Steelers and Jets running back, he went on a bit of a rant last week on Twitter, I guess now X. I mean, on laptop it comes up as X, but like on the phone it still comes up as Twitter. I mean, I'm still going to call it Twitter. I'm not calling it X.
Twitter X.
Twitter X. Well, he went on the rant and he compared himself to the bug on A Bug's Life. I got to pull up the tweet here. Yes, they are
send it
tweets.
Send it to me. If I can find it, I'll definitely pull up on the screen.
Yeah, I got to find it because this was hilarious. But anyway, if you're familiar with it, most people, yes, here we go. I am going to, so I'm trying to find the full thread of it because the full thread is just hilarious. It is incredible. And I will narrate this because this is funny. I'm just going to put it in the private chat because my WhatsApp is acting weird, at least on the laptop. So
okay, go ahead.
So you're going to get it in the private chat. But anyways, I'm going to read it. So Le'Veon Bell said, Disney, a long time ago, 1998, taught me a valuable lesson about sticking together. Go watch A Bug's Life. It'll put the perspective in the running back market. The running backs are the ants. I'm Flick. In parentheses, the inventive ant. I took all the damage from the grasshoppers, owners. He goes on to the next tweet. At the time, no one could see my vision or what I was standing for, but all I was doing was just preparing to go against the grasshoppers and owners. But as a lone inventive ant/running back, I couldn't beat the grasshoppers and owners alone. In 2017 and 18, I was a lone ant. I was Flick. It was only literally me. Fast forward 6 years, now you have multiple ants trying to join the fight against the grasshoppers. It's still not enough, though, because at the end of the day, we're just ants in the grand scheme of things. We're just ants. But seriously, disregard anything I said to you if you haven't seen A Bug's Life or don't remember, because none of this will make sense at all. But if you know, you know. And I'm definitely not trying to stir up anything or have anyone mad at me. I am just saying that's all, so please don't come at me. But once Flick helped out the other ants, realized there are more of us ants than it is of them, grasshoppers owners. They finally defeated the grasshoppers. Ants are strong together, very weak when they are individuals. And he said, bro, somebody said, yeah, God forbid they make $10 million. He said, bro, $10 million is nothing compared to what the grasshoppers make. It's really not even 1%, bro, but they make money off of them running back jersey sales. Make it make sense. It may seem like a lot, and it is not at the same time. And he also added, if I took the money, because he someone else said the Steelers offered you 70 million, you turned it down and sat out. And he said to that, if I took the money, all they do is cut me with no guaranteed money, or they do what they did to Joe Mixon and make him take a pay cut, or he'll get cut. Players got to abide by the contract and play it out regardless, and owners don't. Will tell me how that is fair. So, what do you make of all of that?
He is just trying to make himself relevant by like saying, "Oh, I was the first to fight for the running backs," but it's the change of times. Maybe in the early 2000s, running back were valuable. Remember, when the Ravens won the Super Bowl in the year 2000, nobody remembered the quarterbacks, but the running game was terrific. But now the times are different. If you don't have a good quarterback and a good wide receiver, you are not viable offensively.
Yeah, I mean, it's just efficiency. Like unless you have Derrick Henry, it is not efficient to pay for a running back. It just isn't. And I saw someone point this out the other day that Le'Veon Bell or Derrick Henry might be the last in these bell cow running backs, because every other running back that's coming up is gonna be like a system running back, like with a certain purpose. And it's gonna be really hard for any running back to truly make themselves stand out. And you're just not going to get, and they're not going to get paid. Like Saquon Barkley only getting $11 million. I mean, he was the second pick back in 2018. And he's only
he
getting paid $11
looked
million.
at his quarterback. No, and what probably infuriates him, he sees his colleague Daniel Jones, average quarterback, making having a contract with 4 years, $40 million.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's 160, right, for the 4 years, and he's getting $40 million a year. Like Daniel Jones is getting paid 4 times as much in a season as Saquon Barkley is. Yet ask the average person, who's more important to that offense? Every one of them would say Saquon.
Yep.
So it's just insane that running backs have been so devalued, and especially relative to the quarterback. I mean, Justin Herbert literally has never won a playoff game. He had a 27-point lead in Jacksonville last year and did nothing in the second half. So, but he gets a $262.5 million contract. And I know he has set a record for the first 3 years. He is fun to watch. He is incredible. But has he really earned the highest contract in NFL history?
I guess that's a change of times.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Chargers feel like, oh, we have to secure our guy now. And I get it from that. Oh, the U.S. is going to have a golden chance. And they're in the box. We're in the box. And okay. Yeah. Smith had a chance. Sophia Smith had a chance in the box. And she was behind the D there. But was not able to finish it. But yeah, but it's just interesting to see the state of the contracts. Though, and definitely diametrical examples of the quarterbacks and running backs getting paid way different amounts. But yeah, I guess one last NFL note real quick. The Titans unveiled their Oilers alternates, and they are beautiful. I think they are absolutely gorgeous. I'm curious to see when we wear them. And personally, I would love for us to make – I want one or two things to happen. I want to see these either become permanent, because I think these are so much better than our normal uniforms, or we allow Houston to get the Oilers name back. Kind of like the situation with the Charlotte Bobcats, where the New Orleans Hornets decided to change their name to the Pelicans, gave up the Hornets, and allowed Charlotte to become the Hornets again in basketball. I think we should do something like that.
I think the Texans, they are fine with their name. I don't think they want to have the Oilers back, because it was a revamped franchise.
I know it was, but like the Oilers were just so much cooler than the Texans. Like the Texans is
That's
not a
true.
cool name.
And Oilers about oil, which is a lot about Texas.
Exactly. And it's just much better uniforms. So,
I'm glad. I'm
but
glad they didn't say Tennessee Oilers because there's no oil in Tennessee.
yeah, I mean, it's like the Utah Jazz. There's no jazz being played in Utah, you know? Or like
Or the
how the
Los Angeles
Lakers, yeah, well, like the Los Angeles Lakers, that was originally Minnesota, which made sense because Minnesota has a ton of lakes, like 12,000 lakes. So that's why the Lakers are called the Lakers. So it's just interesting to see where names come from. But I'm excited for those alternates. And the Titans will look good being probably mediocre. But nevertheless, that's it on NFL. Some quick racing notes here. Man, Pocono went nuts this weekend in NASCAR. Finally, we got a race without any weather delays. And it did not disappoint. We had numerous beefs pop up. We had Austin Dillon getting wrecked by Tyler Reddick. To me, Austin Dillon wrecked himself. He came down on Reddick and wrecked himself, but he thought that Reddick intentionally wrecked him, so he came out and threw his helmet at Reddick when he was driving by. So showed his displeasure. We had Ryan Preece getting into a fight with Corey LaJoy on pit road after the race. He was mad that he got spun in the final lap. So that was super interesting. But the race winner, Denny Hamlin, who won his 50th race in the NASCAR Cup Series, he kind of had to push. First, him and Alex Bowman were really close to touching. I don't think they actually touched, though. Bowman just lost it, but it was really close. So Bowman thought he got wrecked by Denny Hamlin. But then on the next restart, Hamlin pushed Kyle Larson into the wall. And Kyle Larson said that that was a dirty move, and I'd never have raced him like that, and he shouldn't have raced me like that. And the entire crowd at Pocono was booing him, flipping off Hamlin when he was doing his burnout, celebrating his win. And Hamlin was like, I don't care what y'all have to say. I'm just glad I won this race. And I think it's just excellent for NASCAR. We need villains in NASCAR. We need people, someone that people will root against. And I think that really, really helps NASCAR to have a villain.
Yeah, make villains make ratings go up in any sport.
Absolutely. And Richmond is next, and that is Denny Hamlin's home track. So I'll be curious to see what reception he gets there. Of course, Richmond's not one of my favorite tracks, but it should be an okay race, I think. But also in exciting news, Shane Van Gisbergen, the Australian supercar star who won in Chicago a couple weeks ago, was the first driver in their Cup debut to win a race in 60 years. He's looking to go full time. And it's going to be interesting in NASCAR because, he doesn't have oval experience. And oval racing is so different from road course racing. But with the way, excuse me, with the amount of road courses that we have now in NASCAR, I think for whoever gets Van Gisbergen, they're getting somebody who can win at least a race a year. And, if he's able to get good at the oval side of NASCAR, watch out. Because it's hard to switch over to oval racing if you're used to street racing. But I think Van Gisbergen could be that guy.
Yeah,
That's all. That's all I have on the American side of things. So, and just as we head into Brazilian here, get back into soccer. It's still 1-1 in U.S. and Netherlands. We are in the 79th minute, so unless somebody scores here in the last 15 minutes, we're heading for a draw potentially.
And you're gonna keep us updated about it. But let's go to Brazilian sports, especially soccer. And Brazilian Cup this midweek, Corinthians had a huge win over Sao Paulo 2-1 at Corinthians Stadium. Renato Augusto, he's just an impressive player, even though he's like the quarterback that has a lot of talent but get a lot of injuries. But when he's healthy, he's decisive. That's Renato Augusto. When he's healthy, he is decisive for Corinthians. He scored twice in the 2-1
So
win over
basically, it's
Sao.
Tua.
Yeah, he's Tua. Renato Augusto
Yeah,
is Tua.
yeah.
He's a veteran Tua.
Mm.
So Corinthians now he is going with a 1 goal lead into the second leg, which is going to be at Sao Paulo Stadium in August 16th. And as I just mentioned, the game just ended 20 minutes ago in Porto Alegre. Flamengo, huge win, 2-0 versus Grêmio at Grêmio Stadium. I think Grêmio play hard, a lot of physical game. They play with a lot of, toughness, but Flamengo is just a better team, better players. When they click, they're lethal. Gabigol and Thiago Maia scored. They could have scored even more. They lost a penalty, but I think Flamengo is 99% in. I think, and if both if the teams that won the first leg goes to the final, we're gonna have a repeat of last year's final, Corinthians versus Flamengo. So it looks like probably is going to have a repeat of last year's final, but there's still the second leg games in August 16. Corinthians and Sao Paulo. It's going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Brazil time, 6:30 Eastern time, and Flamengo and Grêmio is going to be at 9:30 Brazil time, 8:30 Eastern time. Uh, Brazilian championship, Botafogo keeping a double-digit lead in terms of points. They were 2-0 down versus Santos, but they found a way to draw on the road. I think they're going to be the winner of what we call the first turn when you have the first 19 games. But again, the Brazilian championship is going to change a lot after a lot of teams are eliminated either from Brazilian Cup or Libertadores. But of course, now Botafogo definitely into the fight of the Brazilian championship. I wonder who's going to be fighting with Botafogo. I don't think Grêmio is going to be the team that is going to fight, even though if they are eliminated in the Brazilian Cup, which it looks like it after losing uh, to Flamengo, they might be, but I don't know if they're gonna have the roster to win. Flamengo is still in third place, Palmeiras in fourth. I still feel like those two teams have a better roster to fight with Botafogo and Vasco. I mean, that's the most like Vasco is the Mets. The fan base came within a lot of expectations, especially after this American company, 777 Partners, bought the team last year. But they are in the bottom of the league, 9 points, two wins in 15 games. They changed their coach, but I don't know. I don't. What the question
It's
is?
just crazy to me that they are just. It's not getting better there. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, everybody was excited when 777 Partners came in because their executives said even before the team got purchased, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna match the investment with of Flamengo. We're gonna be on the top," and now they're in the bottom. They're doing like equal or worse than when Vasco was, without 777 Partners. So and Vasco is going to be a big drama, big drama. And last but not least, my beloved Rio Branco advanced to the third round of the Paulista Under 23, avoiding relegation. Nick Hill knows how much he's been suffering with Rio Branco. Relieved that we're not going to be relegated to the fifth division of the state of Sao Paulo, but now we're going to be into the fight of the third round. But I mean, at this point, it's like I don't have any big expectations. Of course, I want them to make it to the playoffs, to make it to the quarterfinals. But if they are eliminated, I'll be like, they got their biggest you know
When,
target, which
but I do want to ask about last Wednesday's match though. They got so that ending of that game was so insane. Like because Brazil, like the opponent, I forget who they were playing last Wednesday.
Jabaquara. Jabaquara.
Jabaquara. So it's 2-2 late, and Jabaquara scores an own goal, and then they get a penalty kick down a man on a penalty that was so stupid. It was
Yeah,
not a penalty, and then they score.
the player that gave the penalty, that touched the hand of the ball, he wasn't even in the bench last game, and I saw him on the practice on Friday. He looked very sad. Like, I mean, if I felt kind of, uh, I mean, a little heartbreak, but he was very reckless. But and Rio Branco's gonna face Jabaquara again in the third round, so it's gonna be a tough team to beat. Like, I want to beat Jabaquara so bad after tying with one man up at home and losing on the road.
Yeah, I mean they are certainly tough teams. It was just crazy how that game went. Oh my god, we're so close. Oh man, it feels like the U.S. women have just been on the door for like the past 5 minutes.
Yeah, but
But
Netherlands almost scored too, so it's been a very even game.
absolutely right now in the 86th minute, so it's going to come down to the wire. It feels like someone's going to score and
Yeah,
win. It feels like it's what this. I doubt. I'll be surprised if this ends up being a draw. But yeah, that was just that might have been one of the just wackiest endings to a game I've ever seen. It feels like the Brazilian soccer. That's the league just has some of the wildest soccer.
yeah, Brazil soccer that can be wild, but we're gonna face Jabacora again on Wednesday, so I expect another battle between those teams. But
Absolutely. And like, what other teams are in your group here?
so we have Penapolense, which is the second best team overall. So they're the favorites to qualify in the group. Jabaquara, the team that Rio Branco played last week, and Catanduva Catanduva has brought one of the top three payrolls in this competition. But
Oh boy.
even though they have one of the highest payrolls, they haven't clicked. They qualify in the first and second round more because because the other teams weren't competitive. So I think Ruberg has a shot. I maybe as a sec because the first and the second place qualifies to the quarterfinals. So I think Rio Branco, I can see Rio Branco being the second in the group.
So like, okay, so if they were to go to the quarterfinals, then where would they be at then? Then the tournament.
Uh, what do you, I
So
sorry
so like if
I
they get okay, so like if they win this, if they get into the top two here, they go to the quarterfinals. Then if they how many games do they have to win to be promoted to the third
oh
division?
to be promoted you have to advance to the final. You have to be a finalist.
Okay, so only two teams get promoted.
Yeah, like this tournament is brutal. Think about it, Nick. 36 teams, more than half get relegated, and only two get promoted. It's one of the most brutal tournaments ever.
So basically, it's extremely hard to get to the third tier. What about so in the third division, only two teams get relegated.
Yeah, yeah. Then if you go to the third division, only two teams got relegated. This year was Osasco and Barretos. They
But
already are relegated.
and it's only like this year because they're creating that new division.
No, 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 no. The third division always relegates two and promotes two to the second division, and so on and so on.
Well, I was talking about like between the fourth and the fifth division.
Oh, that I don't know yet. Like the big question is that we have to have an answer from the Paulista Federation is this fourth division is going to be kind of connected to the second and third division, like a A4, or is going to be a B1 and B2? Like what I'm asking is going to be FBS 2 or FCS? Kind of,
I guess that
I
makes
know
sense.
I hope it's gonna be a A4. We're starting in late January, early February, and we play 15 games in the regular season, then we have the postseason. That's what I'm hoping for. And then we don't have the age limit, and that's what I mean. That's what a lot of me and a lot of people are hopeful.
Hmm.
But
So I
Real
guess
Bronco,
so I guess it's all up to the federation.
yes, all it's all up to the federation down in Sao Paulo capital in the East Zone, and so Rio Branco plays on Saturday against Penapolense. But just to wrap up, I was a little disappointed because our biggest rival, União Barbarense, won the game and they also avoid relegation, which means a lot of people gave me a hard time because I was kind of being cocky and like say, hey, no, they're gonna get relegated, and they didn't. But it's life. It's like when you Tennessee Florida rivalry. You give your rival a hard time, then when you lose, you get called out.
Yeah, and because I remember I had a situation a few years ago with Kentucky fans when like I was talking trash to them, and we ended up losing 34-7 to them. So it was just it was a brutal take on social media.
Yeah, definitely. So that's it for Brazilian soccer. I guess we can't wait until the end of the U.S. game. It's gonna be five
Absolutely. We only
seven.
have like 4 minutes. Yeah, we're in the 91st minute, so we only have like 4 minutes left. Just kind of preview what we're going from here. Of course, we'll be heading into August. We're about to get into so much football. Next week we have AFC North to discuss, and I have ACC Notre Dame on tap. Got Clemson. I think obviously one of the most hyped teams this year is Florida State. Um, are they for real? They got a rematch with LSU in the first week. You got Clemson, who I feel like a lot of people are starting to suspect maybe they are past their prime with Dabo. And of course Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman. They got off to an awful start last year, but they had a decent finish. So I think there's a lot to be said there about the ACC and Notre Dame. And then, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, AFC North on the NFL side is our NFL preview, as we are so close. In fact, actually, at the end of next week is the Hall of Fame game.
Whoa,
So
already?
football for real. Yep, for football for real is so close to being back. And, of course, they will be dominating the NFL side of things. As we head into the 92nd minute, America is in Dutch territory. They have 3 minutes to make something happen here. And if it's a 1-1 result, then, it's not terrible because I think both of these teams will be competing for it all here in Australia and New Zealand. Sophia Smith on the left side of the box. She's so good. I mean, for only being 22, she is so good. I was really hoping that'd be with the right side of the box, and that's going to go over. Sullivan had that shot. So 2.5 minutes left in this one in a 1-1 game. And of course, Brazil, they play on Saturday morning against France. So that'll be a good one as well for the Brazilians.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be the Brazil France game is gonna be like U.S. Netherlands game, tough, very physical, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ties.
Yeah, I could totally see that too. And I think it's good to have a game like this in the group stage. I mean, Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia in the first round, and they end up winning the whole thing. So I think you got to be challenged in the group stage. So I just we're in the 94th minute, about a minute and a half here, 93:30 on the American clock. It was like the Dutch have someone down. Of course, this could just be a time wasting tactic. So I'm assuming for the Netherlands, they would love to get out of here with a draw. And then it comes down to goal differential.
I still think U.S. gonna qualify.
Oh yeah, I think they will both qualify, no problem. The question does become then who wins the group, because if this is 1-1, then it comes down to goal differential. And heading into this game, the U.S. had a 3 goal differential, and the Netherlands had 1. So America will have a 2-goal head start when they play Portugal, and the Netherlands will play Vietnam in the last game. So the Netherlands, if both Netherlands and the U.S. win, but the Netherlands has a 3-goal bigger win, then they will overtake the U.S. So I think that's something to keep in mind if you are the U.S. Heading into this final match. You're going to have to not just beat Portugal, you're going to have to score as much as you can. I think to try to outdo the Netherlands and keep that number 1 spot. If the Netherlands, can't do it.
It looks like a serious injury.
Yeah, we have. I don't think this is just time wasting. Like this is definitely. I didn't see exactly what happened. All right. Well, they're about to pull her up. It looks like.
Oh, probably was a head, something like a.
I can see they've put the cap on her head, so I'm assuming that's like a concussion cap or something.
Yeah,
so we're just kind of in a holding pattern here. I'll be curious to see if they let them play like an extra minute once they get the injured player off the pitch.
Yeah, probably will be at a minute. But I think it's going to be a tie, Nick. I think it's going to be a 1-1 game.
Yeah, it's going to take something crazy for someone to win this one. I think obviously both defenses, I think, have to be in the mindset of, all right, yes, we would love to score and win here, but you cannot absolutely let up a goal. So I think both will be playing conservatively as the Netherlands are going to have a chance here at the end. Well, no, America is going to they're kind of fighting for possession. America has the ball. Run up the left wing. America might have one more shot if we can get control of the ball here in Dutch territory. And no, that's not going to work. Dutch is going to pass it back down. And they're going to pass that back out of bounds on the right side, 96-35. I think that was like 30 seconds. So I would imagine they're going to blow it here, maybe right here. And they're going to throw the ball back in. And they're taking their sweet time. And obviously, I'm not going to be able to hear the whistle.
America's going to have one last chance.
Yeah, one last chance here. Come to the right side. This is probably the game. Dutch is going to go all out to defend. That's too weak. Yeah.
Yeah, I think America's still on offensive territory, but yeah, they're not being able to go inside the box.
Yeah, they might get one. Man, that was kind of a hard tackle though, but I don't think they called a foul. And that's going to be Dutch ball. This should be it right here. That the Netherlands has the ball. And and that's it. That's it. 1-1.
Yes.
A point.
1-1
for a hard-fought game between the Americans and the Netherlands, and both teams will move on to be a point. America still retains a 2-goal advantage over the Netherlands heading into the final match, as the U.S. will play Portugal and the Netherlands will play Vietnam. But for Gus Tomazeli down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nick Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee of the United States. You've been listening to the only American and Brazilian sports podcast. This is To America, Two Countries, are all sports. You have a great evening.